What is going on, guys? Jack here, and welcome back to Park to Prem here with Tower Town. Today it is episode number 69, and it is the Season 8 review. Yes, of course, last episode we trialled a new format. We're going to continue with that format today, but just as a word of warning, folks, if you missed either of the uploads yesterday, be aware, there were 2 episodes. Do go check them out before you watch this one, because there's exciting matches in those ones, and this one is just going to be me talking about everything that's happened and kind of giving a bit of an inside scoop for a slightly longer video. I will also say there should be another episode up today as you watch this. Yes, I've been trying to get a double upload. It's never been done before. I've done it before myself, not for a long time, but yes, there will be the start of next season up later today. So keep an eye out for that. I want to keep you guys entertained. There's no football on. We all need a way to cope. Mine is recording videos. Yours can be watching them. So anyway, yes, let's just talk about this season, shall we? Because that's what this is all about. So season number 8 saw us enter League 1 for the first time. Of course, last year we won League 2 very, very convincingly in the end. We made a few transfers. Cazale, I think, was the pick of the bunch as a real kind of season-changing player. And I don't want to say it was an unexpected promotion, but it was a little bit easier than I was expecting. And so my expectations going into this year were reasonably high. And of course, to start the year, our media prediction was 18th. And we hadn't sold Smoljo at the start of the year. That was the big thing, of course. What ended up transpiring over this year was a bit of a weird one, really. Obviously, in terms of tactical approach, we haven't changed anything too drastically. During the season, we switched the ball-winning midfielder to a centre mid on defend. I actually think this change worked really, really well in our system. It encouraged the centre mid just to pass it a little bit more safely. And you can see here, looking at pass completion, Needham, who did play the bulk of his games as that centre mid on on defensive duty, did a really good job from the deeper positions. In terms of the transfers that we did, it was a bit of a weird one, wasn't it? Because we did a load of business on the ins and outs, and of course the big transfer really at the start of the year was Nkololo, and he was a club record transfer at the time of £160,000. I would say he had a reasonably good season, all things considering. But we didn't go too crazy. And then, of course, the big transfers happened. We had Dimitriou, who left us, but we didn't really reinvest the money because he didn't have a work permit and it wasn't a huge sum of money. Then the big deal happened, and Smoljo ended up going to Watford just after the season started, of course, being loaned back. I tried to loan him and extend the loan, and they weren't interested. They say they wanted to play with higher quality players. I hope they change their mind and we can loan him next year. But of course, we were suddenly lumbered with £9 million. I make it sound like £9 million is a problem. But because I'd already built the squad, I didn't want to change things too drastically, and so we ended up waiting until January time to really make the big moves. And the big signings really were Hugo here, who was top draw for us. You can see really good average rating. The centre-back position is certainly an area of the pitch we've struggled with. We brought him in on reasonably big wages. I did have some concerns over his consistency and important matches, but just how good he was swayed me to believe he was worth paying that extra bit of money to. But of course, he came in as a record transfer. Ryan Grant came in for £130,000. Dimitri Sayer joined us for £96,000. Maybe a little bit of a disappointment when you consider the kind of money we were talking for him. But all in all, those players really did make an impact. And, well, there's a deficit here between the money spent and the money made. And obviously you can see how big that money deficit is. Of course, the Smoljo deal involves money being paid over a period of time every year for the next 2 seasons. In about August time, we're going to get £2.5 million. But we certainly have money to flex and spend going forward, which is exciting. There's that sustained form of income now. And we're going to continue to look to invest in the team. But one thing I've really made a point of is really investing in the future and hunting out players for the future. You guys know, if you watch the channel a lot, my favourite thing to do in Football Manager is to hoard in youngsters and really try and develop some in-house, get them to the top of their game. And I feel like we're starting to get that proper academy built up. And it does lead me to believe the museum may need to be closed, everyone. I don't want to upset you too much. I would like to keep the likes of Ferguson, Sonny Best, and probably Kumwenda. But there's a few other names here that probably should have left a while ago. And it's getting a little bit difficult to manage. There's a few too many players here. And it makes it difficult for me to keep on top of the top players we've got here. and of course the players we've got coming in. So pre-warning, I did poll this on Twitter. The overwhelming opinion was we should let the players out of the museum, release them into the world, let them finish off their careers, not sat in the towel or under 23s. It isn't humane. But that will be a change, I guess, going forward. In terms of how this season went then on the whole, of course, it was a weird season because I feel like the goalposts shifted in terms of hopes and expectations, and on top of that, of course, we had a slightly unusual pause. Obviously, I usually play through a season in about a week and a bit, generally speaking. I know a week and a bit is particularly precise, but I got ill, so I didn't play the save game for a week. So there's a bit of a... I kind of view this as two halves of a season. The first half of the season where we were plodding on, and the second half of the season where we made those few extra transfers and, did slowly but surely climb up the league. You can see here, we actually started the year really, really well. We then tailed off a little bit. We had that rotten run that you might remember. And I was worried at this point here. October and November, I mean, if we had had a better month or two here, we would have got automatic promotion, but we just didn't score goals. I mean, you can see 3 0-0s in the league in a row. Just lots and lots of draws, really. And in the end, those draws cost us in the long run. If we just look here at the league table, we finished on 80 points, which ordinarily, if we just look, 80 points would have previously, got you second and automatic promotion a decent number of years. Unfortunately, this year, it's not really the case. And whilst we got the second most goals in the league, we conceded 50, which was pretty poor by all accounts. And it's difficult to know what to attribute that to. We play, obviously, a very, very attacking system. I feel like you could perhaps look at Norris at left-back. You could maybe look at Embleton as well as a player who is good, but he's not incredible. He's not a revolutionary player by any means. And the more I thought about it, I don't think we're going to extend his loan beyond this year. But obviously, as a result of that... that's the area that's, I think, in needing immediate TLC, is really the defensive area. And as much as Needham's done well with passing of the ball, I do have a few question marks over his overall ability. I feel like as a player on the bench, superb, good at winning the ball, can play left back, can play centre mid, can play attacking mid if we need to, but he'd only be a good player for League Two sides according to our staff. I feel like when you actually look at our team, if we'd got promoted this year, we would have been in massive, massive trouble. And of course, when you reach the playoffs as the team finishing in third, you are, I guess, technically the favourites to win it all. I think Sheffield Wednesday will probably get promoted now. No disrespect to Shrewsbury, but Sheffield Wednesday's team is crazy, crazy good. They got relegated. They sold, I think, like 54 million pounds worth of players. That is crazy, crazy sales. Of course, by comparison, we sold £9 million worth of players. Yeah, they've just got so much money. I don't think anyone can compete with them. I'm surprised they didn't win the league. And of course, Charlton kind of just ran away with things. So anyway, let's have a look at the awards, shall we? And, you can see the overall best 11 here for the club. It's still using the old 4-2-2-2 or 4-2-4 or 4-4-2, whatever you want to call it. You can obviously see the players here, but Embleton has been inducted in, so give him a round of applause. And Shuttleworth also finding his way onto the bench. Yeah, you can see here on the bench we've got Shuttleworth alongside the likes of Romario Vieira, Leighton Stewart, Donnelly Blackburn rather, and of course Mampala. And Mampala's been a bit of a weird player this year. I wanted to talk about this later, but I might as well talk about it now. He just hasn't played enough this year. He's fallen out of favour. He's on £3,000, which currently makes him one of the big earners. I'm pretty certain that over the next year, the wage budget is going to see a big shift. Our wage structure right now is that of a League Two side in terms of the kind of money we're offering players. As we make strides towards becoming a championship club, we're going to be seeing players starting to earn five-figure sums, I imagine. £10,000 may become the norm for some of our key players. And that's kind of where we're at now. We're a team in transition, but the good news is with the Smolio sale, we do have that financial stability. I have been thinking, I have been wondering, with players like CC, I mean, there's lots of teams interested in him. Is this a Smolio situation again? Do I want to sell CC? I guess also comes into the equation, and you could almost apply this to a few different players in the team. I don't know. How much could we sell these players for? Again, is another thing that comes into my mind. I have had a little bit of an overwhelming concern, and that is the fact that not all of our players in terms of players with potential are actually developing that well when they're at the club, and I think that is down to the training facilities and youth facilities. In terms of the actual training and coaches and stuff, I mean, our assignments are pretty well sorted. You can see here, they're not bad. I am this summer going to make a big overhaul of the staff, which may help us. Obviously, you can see here, we already have an incredible staff setup, but I do feel like it could be better, and I have intentionally not renewed the contracts of a lot of different staff members. A lot of scouts included in this as well, a lot of just coaches across the board. I feel like we need a bit of a clear out, and we can definitely start to attract some better staff members. You kind of look at some of the more recent additions and how much money they're on compared to some of the staff members who have now been at the club for upwards of 5 years and are kind of just plodding along. I want to click on a random staff member and be like, look how rubbish they are. I'm sorry, Tommy Zard, I'm going to pick you at random, but it kind of illustrates the point that we have some individuals who are very, very good when it comes to coaching, but there is dead wood that can be replaced, and I feel like that might help solve the problem a little bit. But the concern about, players not developing leads me to believe, should we maybe be looking to sell players who are out on loan, who haven't developed enough? I think a good example of this would probably be the French guys, to be honest, Baumann and Ericart. Baumann here, he's played in the Vanarama National League. There was at a time quite a lot of interest in him. He apparently has a load of potential, and he's done okay at Boston this year. He's got some goals, he's got some assists. I don't know if he's ever going to develop for us age 19, and it's a case of, do I try and sell these players whilst they still have some potential, or do I let them potentially not fulfill it and get nothing for them? Ericart's a similar player actually. At 19, he's had a fantastic loan spell this year at Bolton in the National League North. The National League North is 3 divisions below us. And there's more players like this. Players like, I guess Tisdale is a little bit older, but I guess Tisdale's the example of the problem, where I feel like Tisdale is too far gone now. At 21, and he's going to be 22 in just a few days' time, he has loads of potential. He's not really fulfilled it. He's had a few loan spells. I'm not going to get any money for him now. And if we could get just a few £1 million of some of these players, it might be worth it. I'd look at Joe Hans as another example of maybe a player who's gone past it. I don't know. I mean, again, Shvetsov and Koklov as well, players who just don't have work permits. Maybe I've got to look to sell them on. But if we could get Smolyo kind of money just for a player, doesn't matter which player it is, training facilities and youth facilities, we can guarantee that we can upgrade them every single year. And that would be huge for us. I mean, financially, our value isn't that good. Obviously, the chairman's been looking to sell the club here, there, and everywhere. We do have facilities being upgraded, if I'm not mistaken. We probably have a news item about that. We were promised it earlier on in the year, so it might be higher up. I've not even checked. We should really just go through the awards, I guess, because that's where I said I wanted to start. So, in terms of the in-game awards, Andre Cazale, comfortably Fans Player of the Year. That's not surprising to me. He has been incredible. 13 assists, 4 goals, a 7.62 average rating in the league is just absolutely nuts. Interestingly, CC considered signing of the season and young player of the season. I can only assume the voting was held prior to the semi-final second leg. And Grant apparently got goal of the year. Can we watch it? Is it going to load? It might have been in an older version of Football Manager, because there has been a few updates in the last couple of weeks. The fact that it's not showing up here makes me think that we can't view it. Either that or the game's just being weird, which could be a thing. It could be the skin. It could be anything. Can I close this now? Football Manager, are you okay? Do we want to close it? I mean, it's that good the game can't load it. I'm going to wait for this to solve itself, and I'll be back in a second for the rest of the awards. Okay, the game has decided finally to go back. So it was an amazing goal by Grant. I'll make it up. It was a half volley from outside the area that went into the top corner. In truth, I can't even remember it, which is a little embarrassing, isn't it? Anyway, season review. The FA Cup run was really the pick of the things here. It was unfortunate the way that we lost to Norwich, and of course we went to penalties against Man City as well. When you look at the season as a whole, despite being the first year where we've not got promotion here, it's been a very good season. We have competed on a lot of fronts. Unfortunately, that moment to forget is probably going to be what the season's remembered for. The average attendance, by the way, that is a huge increase on last year. I'm pretty sure last year we didn't even get over 1,000 fans. I'm aware that a lot of those are probably at this point going to be away fans. But at the same time, that is just income that we weren't making before. We can have a look at the club vision and expectations meeting. So it doesn't look like anything's changed here. Oh, build a new stadium. Oh, I like that. I guess they want to go back home because we're not playing in Towler right now and we're playing at a different stadium. But a 5-year plan, look to sign and sell players for a profit. We've already started that with Smoljo. As I said, there's definitely an opportunity to continue doing that, I think. I don't think anything else here is new. Expectations next year, reach the playoffs again, feels more than reasonable. I'm just going to accept that outright. I don't think besides the new stadium, there's anything new there. End of season meeting. I'm going to tell the players the playoffs again. I actually think we can get automatic promotion next year. But I feel like we punched above our weight this year, and so the players aren't going to want me to get too carried away. So I'm just going to go with what the board have suggested. It feels safer. In terms of injuries, we had a few. I feel like Michael Jacobs was perhaps, of our first team players, one of the players who got injured the most, it felt like, just during the year. He was out a few times with different stuff. Andre Cazale, of course, who was our player of the year, only played 29 league games. That was largely down to the fact he dislocated his shoulder and was out for 2 months. That actually came during a run of games where we actually played very well, which is a little unusual. But when he came back, he really was just the first name down on the team sheet. It's interesting. He's certainly one of those players who's punching above his weight, I feel like, a little bit, because he's not the most well-rounded footballer by any means in Football Manager. But as far as a deep line playmaker goes at this level, he has the attributes to play that one role really, really well. So as long as we don't start asking him to play box-to-box midfielder or anything else, I feel like he's just going to be on the team sheet for the next couple of years at the very least. Players have started their break. That's cool. I'm going to hit continue once more because I'm pretty sure I learnt from last year that hitting continue once shows some new stuff, and indeed it does. Wow. Okay, so the board have announced plans to build a new stadium. They're looking for suitable sites and possible investors. Look in the mirror, Alex. Look in it. Find your inner self. This is not going to be a smooth process, and it'll be some time before any plans can be finalised. So we could be waiting a while. The board are going to upgrade the training facilities. That's going to cost $700,000, and they can't afford to improve the youth facilities, which is annoying. This is one of my concerns, is that the Smoljo funds that we're going to get every August are going to come after a cut-off point. There's like a cut-off point in July where if you request new facilities, the board wait for the end of the next season to come around. I think for a window in the next couple of months, if we can ask for youth facilities again, if we can get some money from a sale or just invested, or, it appears, we will be able to ask for the youth academy stuff to all be upgraded. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I think that's possible. But if we wait until August, it'll be too late. We'll be stuck in the same situation where we wait for the whole year to come around and then hope we then have the money in the bank at the end of the year when we've had a whole year of losing that Smoljo money with underlying costs. If the facilities cost $700,000, we didn't have much more than $700,000 before. Okay, well, that could be a problem. We have £34,000 in the bank. That's a little uncomfortable, isn't it? That could be problematic. Right, we'll worry about that later. I need to do my own personal awards. I have this checklist on the right side of the stuff to cover in the end of season reviews. I've kind of gone off script a lot today because there's just been lots of thoughts buzzing around in my head, I guess. I feel like the end of season reviews are a chance for me to talk, not worrying about talking for too long, going into lots of nitty-gritty details. It's for those of you who like to know what I'm thinking, because very often with these videos, I'm talking about what's happening rather than what I'm anticipating and long-term planning. This video and this kind of, end of season format allows me to do that a little bit. So let's go through my awards. And of course, you can put your award suggestions down below. So my player of the season, drum roll please, it's Andre Cazale. It literally can't be anyone else. He has comfortably the best average rating in the team. Kosic, I guess, is a very close runner-up. Had he not come in January and only really established himself towards the tail end of the year, he'd probably be way higher. 11 goals he got from inside forward on the right. I am tempted to try an inside forward on the left as well and see if we could get two really good inside forwards, how well they could work. Kosic is right-footed. I'm kind of half tempted to train him to play out on the left, so he's then naturally cutting in on his stronger foot. Especially makes sense when he's very right-footed, although I guess we could also ask him to develop his weaker foot. So yeah, Kosic a close runner-up, and Kosic does win the award for surprise package, because I didn't expect him to do what he's done this year, to be honest. In terms of most improved player, who would I give most improved player to? I don't feel like there's been a player in the first team who's really kind of broken in out of nowhere and improved a ton. Could I not give that this year? I guess if I was going to give it to anyone, I'd give it to Leighton Stewart, purely because last year he got 18 goals in 33. I was not convinced he was going to be able to replicate that goal scoring again for another year in a higher division. And I feel like he had to step up his game. He had to improve in order to do that. And ultimately, he has ended up with 14 goals in the league, 18 in all competitions, and established himself as the starting striker. And that is obviously both ahead of Mampala, but also ahead of Dimitri Sia, who I brought in kind of anticipating was going to just dislodge Leighton, and Leighton was going to become our super sub. It's not really how things transpired. These two guys fought it out, and for the most part, Leighton Stewart, got a lot of games played because he was the better player. So clubman, player who served the club well, I'm going to give this sentimental award to James Norris, because he will be replaced this summer. He is the one position that I am desperately going to look to change around. So wave goodbye to him. He'll probably still be in the club as the backup left back, but we'll give him clubman. And in terms of disappointment of the year, who would I give? Dimitri Sia, I almost want to give it to, but that feels almost a little bit harsh. Disappointment of the year. Was there someone who didn't play many games who at the start of the year I thought was going to play a ton? Maybe Ballo. Ballo was coming. I think Ballo was injured to start the year, and he never just established himself in the first team. In fact, he wasn't even injured at the start of the year. It was the end of last year where he got injured. He's on £3,000 a week. I need to sell him. That is far too much money for a player who made 3 starts to be on. He got a goal and 2 assists when he did play, but you can see just looking at his average ratings on the whole, he just wasn't good enough, and he's eating up a huge amount of our wages alongside the likes of Mampala and Rush, who are, between those 3 players, they are 3 of the 6 highest earners at the club. None of them are justifying their keep, and I may have to move them all on. And I know the Mampala Appreciation Society isn't going to be all that happy about it, but I do feel like he has slowed down this year, whereas Stewart has stepped up. I do feel like I would love to get in a new star striker. I thought Sayer could be that man. He hasn't really been that man. Maybe Manasseh has to make way as a result. So in terms of the team overview, in terms of, goal scorers and stuff, Stewart, DKM and Kosic leading the way. Surprised by DKM as well. DKM got double figures for goals and assists in all competitions. You can see in the league he was a little bit more disappointed. He was exceptional in the cup games, and he was one of the reasons why we were so successful with our cup runs. In the league he was, I don't want to say disappointing, but just not quite of the same standard. It's kind of easy to look at these stats and kind of, lose things, I guess. And Kololo, similarly, he got 5 assists outside of the league and only 2 assists in the league. Made a lot of appearances off the bench. I still don't regret signing this guy at all. I feel like he adds some much needed experience into the team and certainly was a useful player for us who came in with some good goals. But in terms of stat-wise, there isn't really an individual who stood out. Sometimes when you look at your team at the end of the year, there's that one striker who just has 20 goals. There isn't really that player. If you were going to look at outliers, I guess Kosic would be the outlier with 11 goals in 15 starts and 16 appearances. It looks more impressive, I guess, when you just look at the league form where he got 10 goals in 12 starts and 1 appearance on off the bench and has continued to improve. Still terrified about the injuries. In terms of how we compared to the rest of the league, I feel like this is where maybe it's a little bit more interesting. Andre Cazale, 7 player of the matches, and his average rating I mean, that's how much better he was than everyone else in this league. I don't even know if we have any other players here. We do actually. Shuttleworth, who played deep line playmaker for us a fair bit, also did well. I feel like part of it is down to the match engine, but even if you just look at Shuttleworth compared to Andre Cazale, there is a big difference between these two players who did play the same role within the team. Shuttleworth came in December when Cazale was struggling. Behind them, we don't have another player, so it really does emphasise just how good they were for us. In terms of kind of goal scorers, that's somewhere where normally you'd expect us to be right at the very top. Leighton Stewart sits in 7th place with 14 goals. Of course, didn't play that many games, and in terms of goals per minute, whilst he doesn't have the best, that goes to Mibudi. His is certainly one of the better ones out of all the players up here. Clinical in front of goal, certainly, but not standout in the division. And I kind of knew that going into this year because we didn't sign a whole load of new first-team players. There was a few very focused upgrades, which makes the fact that we've done as well as we have this year that little bit surprising. Anyway, if we just have a look at team stats, team and detailed, you can see our average possession for the season was 57%. That is one of the best in the league. That is really, really impressive. We hold on to the ball well. We do dominate games really well, even if we're not quite as good. I wrote a bit of a comment discussing it off the back of the last episodes. Some people saying, Jack, why were you still on attacking when you took on Shrewsbury in the second leg? You got a sending off, you went a goal down, it was 3-2, you were leading it. Why didn't you just try and park the bus for 70-odd minutes? And the reason is that this year we have conceded 50 goals. We do not have a good defence, and our midfielders, especially our attacking midfielders, they're not good defensively. They're not good at coming back. We haven't got players who are going to, do a good shift if we choose to go cautious or if we choose to go defensive and sit men behind the ball. And because of the way that we can dominate possession, and we do this when we're down a man, there's a few instances this year where we had sendings off. I hope I can find one real quick now, but there's a few instances like this game against Exeter where we have a player sent off in the 20th minute and we still go on to bully the teams and win the game. And in this game, when the sending off happened, I did the exact same change that we did against Shrewsbury. Now, yes, Exeter aren't as good, but even when you look at the Shrewsbury game that we played, I feel like we wanted to stick to our principles. We wanted to continue to dominate the ball, and we had more possession despite being down a man. This game was ultimately lost on our inability to create chances, and that is largely down to the lack of the attacking midfielder. We dropped the centre attacking mid because CC got sent off, and we just went with the two wide players playing kind of roles where they will cut inside and utilise the central space, and we're hoping that would be enough. As it kind of turned out, it wasn't. Of course, I also think it's worth remembering that the goal that we actually lost this game to Shrewsbury on was a set piece. It wasn't like we went gung-ho and were far too attacking and caught out because we had fewer men. In fact, the centre attacking mid in our system, of course, plays on the attacking duties. They don't do anything defensively normally. Sure, Stewart's a little bit more isolated, but ultimately we conceded 3 goals with a similar defensive shape to what we normally play. And the last of their goals was a set piece. The second one was a lucky kind of ricochet between Smolyo and their attacker. And I feel like we operated best this year when we did try and control the play, even in games like the one that I showed against Exeter. And obviously the fact that we have an average possession this year of 57% just shows that is very much part of how we play. I can't go back because I'm not clicking the back button because it moves around because I'm a noob. But no, in terms of average possession, we had a lot of it. And obviously we converted that into goals. It wasn't like we had a load of possession and there was no end product. We scored 73 goals. But unlike Charlton, who absolutely walked the league despite scoring fewer goals, they kept an obnoxious number of clean sheets. They conceded 22 goals in 44 games. They kept 28 clean sheets. That is absolutely ludicrous. And when you look at how much further we were behind, it's kind of obvious where this season was won and lost for us, and it was defensively. In terms of average attendance by capacity, 21% is not that great, but of course, we have been playing in a stadium that is not our own and that is far too big. We did have the lowest attendance of the year. In terms of average attendance, Sunderland have the highest. They've actually got relegated down to League 2 this season. We, on the other hand, training quite a little bit, but our average attendance is almost more than the population of the town of Towler now. So that's some progress, I guess. In terms of net transfer spend, I'm imagining we're going to be near the bottom here. You can see Hull, Charlton and Sheffield Wednesday also sold players, but we were fourth best in that regard, which as a newly promoted team is kind of surprising. In terms of wages as well, we have the 12th highest wage budget. We're not a club with a huge infrastructure. We do rely on buying and selling players, which is why it's one of the obviously club cultures that we have now, is to buy players to sell on for a profit. It's how we have been sustaining ourselves and how we will continue to do so. And obviously the money that we have here, when you compare it to some of the teams we were competing with this year, is a little pitiful. We were on 25% of the budget that Sheffield Wednesday have. To be fair, Shrewsbury have done very, very well this year because they're way behind us. So for them to reach the playoff final is impressive. But we're not a big fish, and I do feel like we did overperform a little bit this year. Anyway, shall we have a look at the hierarchy and dynamics? Everyone loves dynamics. Now, the good news is we have massively overperformed this year. So despite a disappointing climax to the year, everyone is very, very happy, which is what you want to see. If we look at the hierarchy, no drastic changes here. Obviously, kind of surprising to see Norris and Mampala here. As I said, Norris is probably not going to be in the first team this year. Mampala's wages lead me to believe maybe we need to offload him. But we have got loads and loads of players here queuing up to take his place. And, in terms of influential players, we have plenty of them because the turnover of players, at least in the last few years, hasn't been that huge. I do feel like as we make the step up now, to the Championship and then certainly pursuing Premier League football, we are going to see a turnover of players not dissimilar to what you saw in the first few years here, but that's kind of just the nature of the beast. I feel like the last couple of years we've been competing in divisions where there isn't a massive jump in quality. League One to Championship is a big jump. Championship to Premier League is it's an ocean apart. The good news is that obviously the small money is good. If we could, as I said, maybe sell on a few more players, it would just give me that flexibility to compete with them, but I don't know who we can sell for that kind of money. That's going to be a challenge in itself, but obviously it's a club philosophy. We do need to do it in order to keep things going. I can't just rely on Alexander to bail us out every single season, which is what it felt like it might descend into at one point. So anyway, in terms of team overview, because I know people like to look at the overview and stuff, Kumwenda and ourselves are listed as legends. Sonny Best, Leighton Stewart and Andre Cazale now as icons, so Cazale making that step forward. And you can see the favourite personnel there as well. Someone mentioned the average ticket price and the average season ticket price for our team is really high. I don't know why that is. I actually think the average ticket price might have gone down this year. I might be completely wrong with that. But obviously that is helping us because whilst we are getting smaller attendances, we are ripping people off. I mean, it's the attractive football we're playing. We can justify charging them more. At least that's how I'm going to, justify it. Looking at our facilities here, obviously the training facilities are going to be upgraded. Youth facilities below average is not good. Interestingly enough, you can see here the stadium planned capacity is 7,473. That's a little over half what we currently have at the Gateshead International Stadium. In terms of academy coaching and youth recruitment, both very, very good. And we are reaping the benefits of that. I talked about it just a couple of episodes ago. Dylan Turnbull this year, really good young player to get in our intake. That gives me hope for the future that as we continue to improve our youth training facilities, we can turn into this factory that churn out really good players. I want to aspire to be a bit of a Southampton, one of these teams just associated with producing really good English players. Hopefully that will be without having to sell them on longer term. I'd be much more inclined to keep someone like Dylan Turnbull and sell on some of the freebies that we've brought in from abroad for nothing, just because these players are homegrown, they're English, they help us out when we go into the promised land of the Premier League and, looking at more longer term sustainable success. Anyway, let's have a quick look, shall we, at the history books and the overview and the records. So the graph hasn't updated yet, but for the first time ever, there will not be a green dot, everyone. I know, shock horror. Obviously, leasing trophy, first ever piece of proper silverware. The curse that has plagued us for many, many years is broken. And of course, thinking back to our lower league days, we always struggled, didn't we? You can see in the under-28s, we've actually done... under 28s, under 18s, we've done very, very well. obviously, in the last couple of years, our youth team have now started to compete. Our under-18s finished second in their Youth Alliance League, which is great. Obviously, we would love to get promotion. Maybe that's the aim for next year with the new players we've got. Our under-23s, by comparison, not quite as good, it would be fair to say. But, of course, when you compare the size of our team to the teams, in and amongst us here, we're not quite of the same calibre. We are still Towler, but again, this maybe feeds into that idea that I do need to start to treat the under-23s not as a museum, but as a serious place where we really do start to develop players at the club. Anyway, let's have a quick look at the rest of England, because I know people are curious to see it. Unfortunately, all the awards come through before the playoffs and such are finished. But just looking at the Premier League table here, Liverpool won the league. If we look at the history of the Premier League and past winners, it's been the Liverpool and Man City show in this save game, although Chelsea for a number of years have come second, and now they've come third the last couple, but very, very close towards the top of the table. Norwich City, who you might remember, of course, we lost to only 3-1 in the FA Cup, in 6th place. They're quite good, although the season isn't completely wrapped up yet, so actually it could still change with one game left. The goal swing would need to be quite large there. If we just look at the Championship, because I know people are going to ask, Jack, what happened to Swansea? Swansea City, everyone, ended up finishing 14th. So it would have been nice to be in the same division as them next year, but it wasn't really meant to be. I did have a look at Walsall, Rotherham and Blackpool in my own time, because they're going to be relegated down to our division. By comparison to the likes of Sheffield Wednesday and Charlton, I don't think they're anywhere near as good. I think that's going to be a big benefit to us this year. I feel like Charlton and Sheffield Wednesday particularly were kind of freaks in terms of how good they were. Of course, Northampton were also relegated and have gone straight back up. This year, assuming Sheffield Wednesday beat Shrewsbury, which it might not happen, it might happen, it will be a case of the 3 teams who got relegated from the Championship go straight back up to the Championship, and that kind of reinforces that idea in my mind that it is a big leap up, and it might have been a little bit premature had we had to make that leap next year. So, in terms of changes for next year, there's not going to be any new leagues added. Of course, last year we added in some new divisions. This is the current setup for those people wondering. Of course, we added in some new leagues, which in turn added in some new players with incomplete history, which I'm not the biggest fan of. Of course, a good example of that would be Benny and Kololo, where there's just a gap where we didn't have France loaded, but at the same time, I do need more players in the database at this point. I feel like, we need to start looking further afield now that we're not just restricted to looking in Durham for our players. But no, there's no kind of drastic changes to the game. As I said, next year and over the summer, I think the big goal is obviously get promoted. I think automatic promotion should be the target this year. I've already talked about it a little bit, but the teams coming down I don't think are as good as the likes of Sheffield Wednesday and Charlton, certainly. The squad for next year, positions to address. What would I do with this team right now going into next year? I'll tell you what I would do. I would get rid of Embleton, because I don't think we're going to sign him again. Norris has got to go. Smolio's got to go. Needham probably isn't going to be around. CC, I'm still upset about. And Stewart probably goes as well. So there's kind of 6 positions in the team that I would like to upgrade. Now, obviously, we have got players who can slot into these positions. But when you look across these players that are laid out now, I feel like they have the ability to be the core of a really, solid team that can push on next year. I talked about it, but 80 points, which is what we ended up getting, would have got you promoted most years. So with that in mind, there doesn't have to be as many changes as I'm proposing here. But if I wanted to be really brutal and really cutthroat, knowing that we're going to have, a decent amount of money to spend, we've got plenty of wage budget and plenty of transfer budget. I think 6 new players in these positions would leave us in a really good spot. And in terms of general squad depth, I talked about a few players who are on a bit too much who I would maybe look to move on. But actually, I don't think we would need to sign a great deal of depth. Maybe at centre-back we're struggling a little bit. Someone like Younger just isn't good enough anymore. But just as a reminder, we have got a load of players joining us. And we have got a few good centre-backs. Wayne Hall is joining us. He was released by Norwich's under-23s. I feel like he's got something about him, even if, the Norwich staff clearly don't quite feel the same. But there are a few other really good centre-backs who are going to be joining us. Jimmy Morrison, could be a good player. And also in the under-23s, we've got players as well who we could potentially look to promote. Ronnie Williamson has, I feel like he's improved quite a lot this year. I mean, in terms of the progress graph he has, if we just look at his development in the last year, yeah, he's come on leaps and bounds. He might be ready for first-team football next year. He's either-footed, and I think, if I remember correctly, yes, he prefers to play on the left in a two-man pairing, which would work quite nicely with Hugo, because Hugo is very, very right-footed. And if we just compare the two, I don't feel like there's a massive difference between them. I guess Hugo is significantly better, but he's also on almost 20 times more money, so that's probably expected. In terms of other stuff, though, I need to get those youth facilities upgraded. I know it's been cancelled. As I said, I think there's a chance that if I can sell some players on, maybe I can request it and get that approved before this season officially ends. You can see here I do have the options to click these. I'm not going to do it right now because the overall balance is £34,000. But if we could make an early sale, that's definitely an option I might look to explore. In terms of my prediction for in a season's time. So last season's prediction, if I'm not mistaken, and I didn't check, but my memory I think is okay, was to reach the playoffs. We've done that. My prediction going into next year is... What is my prediction going into next year? I think we will get promoted next year, and we will have the best goals scored in the league and a top 3 defence in the league. That's what I think is achievable if we can address some of the problem areas, particularly the left side of defence on the whole, because Embleton was never really meant to play at left centre-back. He kind of had to out of necessity this year. Hasn't really impressed. I feel like with the right improvements, we can go very, very far, but it could be a long pre-season of hunting out players, but I'm kind of quite excited to do that. It's one of my favourite things to do, is just to sit down and intermittently play Football Manager whilst doing other stuff and, do my thing. Right now, as I record this, it is Saturday morning. I have nothing to do with the rest of my day, so I'm going to be doing tidying up whilst, I guess, binging some YouTube series, watching some Netflix, because there's no sport to watch, and also doing all the transfers and stuff so that we can get a second episode up today, which of course will be the start of next season. So anyway, guys, this has been the end of this end of season review. As I said last time we did one of these, I'm still kind of trialling the format. I know it's certainly not for everyone. Those of you who enjoy the quick, concise match day stuff, I'm sure that this is kind of completely opposite to what you enjoy, and those people I'm now addressing probably aren't watching the video at this point, but I do feel like it's really good to give you an insight into what I'm thinking, my plans, my rationale. I feel like someone like Cece we could probably offer out and get some good money for, because there's so many teams interested in him. I'm kind of curious just to give it a go now. Should we give it a go? Let's end with this. I'm going to offer him out for 10 million with a percentage of next sale of 50%. Let's offer him out. I don't know if anyone's going to be interested. The board may just intervene here. 10 million's very ambitious, isn't it? But we got 9 million for Smolyo, and he's a similar age. We've got offer. Ooh. Okay, there you go. These are not dissimilar offers to what we got for Smolyo before, and I have the ability to negotiate all of them, which is nice. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go negotiate these. I'll see you next time, because I feel like we can probably get some good money for him. There's some teams who haven't even bid. Which of the 7 didn't bid? Name and shame them. Newcastle, Leicester, all the Premier League big dogs apparently. West Ham. Oh, I don't know. I'll have a look and negotiate. There's so many here to go through. It all feels very underwhelming. Basically, this man got sent off. If I can milk him for some money, I'm going to take him and trade him at the farm. That doesn't make sense. The image in my head is the opening scene of Shrek where you first meet Donkey and all the magical creatures are being traded in. CC is my Pinocchio, and his nose grows when he lies and when he gets sent off, and hopefully so does his price tag. Right, I don't know where I'm going with this, folks. I'll see you guys later on today. We're going to be starting season number 9. I'm excited for it. You should be too. And that is all from me today. Drop a like if you enjoyed. If you've got any comments, feedback for this series, for these episodes, specifically the end of season 1, I would love to hear it. And now I am done. So thank you. See you later. It's me, Jack, and I'm out.